Warriors Celtics game 6, potentially the last NBA game of the season. This is the Stochastic NBA Deeper Dive. We're sponsored by Prize Picks today. Adam and I are going to be breaking down the game for an hour. Then we're going to be flipping it over to Josh and Laufey. They're going to break the game down for an hour, but then they're going to be watching the game over on playback. So if you guys want to watch the game alongside with them today, go and do it over on playback. Free to use service, I guess we call it. And what's really cool is it's going to be Adam. Well, not Adam. Josh and Laufey. Are you going to be on also, Adam, actually?
Hell no.
Okay. I might jump by. I'm not sure. I haven't decided what I'm doing with my night. But at the very least, Josh and Laufey are going to be there. They're going to be on stream watching the game, and it's going to be on the channel while you guys are watching. So it's synced up. Really cool way to watch live, free to use. So guys, go check that out as well. And while you're here, like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Adam, how are you feeling about game 6? Are we going to a game 7, or are the Warriors going to close it out?
So I tweeted earlier, I'm pretty confident that the Celtics win tonight and the Warriors win game 7 because it's just the absolute nut low for me. If there is a game 7, I agreed to do the strategy show on Sunday morning when I would normally be off. If the Celtics win game 7, I make $5,000. So I'm pretty confident it's going to game 7 and then the Warriors are going to win.
That's a good way to just assume everything's going to work out. What's the worst possible outcome for Adam? That's how the games are going to go. For me, I would also like the Celtics win the next 2. I don't expect it, though. I do think the most likely scenario, just based on what the spreads are going to be for this game, the Celtics are favored by 4 today, so they're more likely to win this game than they are to lose. Then when we get into game 7, we've seen pretty commonly the Warriors end up being favored by either 3 or 3.5 points over the Celtics. So in general, the way that the books have rated this series, the Celtics have been bigger favorites at home than the Warriors have been when they're at home, but more home games for the Warriors and the Celtics. And also at this point, Celtics need to win back-to-back games to win the championship. So uphill sledding for Boston, but still doable. Series isn't totally over. One final thing before we get in. Do you buy into this Andrew Wiggins MVP noise?
I haven't paid enough attention to the series to really have a take. Like, I know he's played well, and I know that I thought people were kind of underrating him throughout the season, but I haven't paid nearly enough attention to have a take on MVP.
Fair enough. One thing I will add before we get into the game, because a lot of people have been asking me about Wiggins MVP bets. One thing that I will say is for sure negative is that DraftKings Sportsbook has been tweeting, telling people to bet Wiggins for MVP, which is never the best thing ever when it comes to betting advice. It's just straight up a sportsbook telling you this is the side we would like you to bet. But also, here's the main reason I think that kind of whoever ends up winning the series, I personally think Curry should win MVP, but that aside, that's probably most likely not going to happen if the Celtics win the series. But trying to pull up the splits here, when we have seen Andrew Wiggins on the court this year without Steph Curry, and especially in the playoffs, he's been far less effective. So in the playoffs, Andrew Wiggins, 55.5% effective field goal percentage with Steph Curry on the court, 36.3 in the playoffs when Steph Curry is off the court. So to me, obviously, that's just one thing to point to, but Steph Curry is just by far the most valuable player on the Warriors, in my opinion. I know Wiggins was really good last game, but I think Steph Curry has been more valuable overall. And so to me, I think Curry's been the most valuable player in the series. That's just kind of my take on this opening up. But we've got a DFS slate to talk about, and we should start by talking about that guy, Steph Curry, who overall has shot the ball extremely well in this series, but kind of struggled last game. Really the first time we've seen a real struggle from the field. No 3-pointers made. I can't remember the last time Steph had a game where he did not knock down a 3. What are you expecting from him today after what happened last game?
I just expect, what we would normally get from Steph. I certainly don't expect him to not make a 3-pointer again. Obviously narrative wise, it would be cool if he just comes out and knocks down 11 threes and you get the game that Draymond was talking about where you get Curry coming out, pissed off and all of that. But realistically, I just expect exactly what we would have expected if he had a normal game last time out.
Yeah, and I think one thing too is, and when I'm doing the deep dive, I try to separate it where it's, hey, we talk about the Warriors, then we talk about the Celtics and kind of try to separate them. But it's impossible to not talk about Steph Curry or Jason Tatum without talking about the other one, just because of the way the pricing works out. They're on a price tier of their own. And what everybody's always forced to make a decision point on is whether to play Steph Curry or Jason Tatum. I've been on the side of Jason Tatum throughout the series, and it hasn't worked out all that well because it's typically been Steph Curry who's outscored him. But once again, I have Jason Tatum projected for more fantasy points than Steph Curry. He is a higher priority for me on the high end, and generally the ownership between the two of them hasn't been that much different. So while we're talking about Steph Curry, do you have a strong lean between Tatum and Curry?
So I lean towards Tatum as far as who looks better. He's $400 less expensive. He, at least in theory, gives you more rebounding, even though he hasn't really rebounded very well throughout the postseason. He's at 1.13 DraftKings points per minute in the series, but he's typically going to give you like 41, 42 minutes. Here in an elimination game, you could certainly see even more minutes from Tatum. So I think the playing time edge and the lower salary are what push me that direction. But I think it's also worth mentioning that, like, when you look at captain ownership, Tatum's projected for twice the ownership of Curry. So even though I think Curry does project lower than Tatum, and I think that's going to be the consensus across the industry, you do want to keep in mind just how volatile Curry is, and the fact that he certainly is. I wouldn't say he's a 2-to-1 dog to outscore Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I have Tatum projected quite a bit higher than Steph Curry, but this doesn't mean I think he outscores him, 2 out of 3 times if this game was to be played 3 times. So if this captain ownership holds true, which it might, because we've seen this throughout the playoffs on single game slates, everything is really reactionary to whatever happened last game. And just the fact that Steph Curry didn't play particularly well last game, I think he is going to end up being a little bit lower owned than Jason Tatum. And then let's say Curry plays well this game, but the Celtics win. Curry's going to be the more popular one in game 7. It's just kind of how we've seen the ownership break out across this playoffs in general, especially in the finals where everybody's watching the same games and everything's really reactionary to what happened, which is the other reason why I think Andrew Wiggins is going to be massively popular today. He is coming off of what was probably the best game of his career, not just from a rebound standpoint, but I mean, a little bit of everything. Scoring, rebounds, just everything. Andrew Wiggins was the best player on the court in game 5. He's the main reason that the Warriors are currently up 3-2 in the series. He also scored 52 fantasy points, the first time the entire season he went for over 50 fantasy points, including the regular season. So how are you going to prioritize Andrew Wiggins, who is playing the most minutes of anybody on the Warriors, 43 minutes in each of the last 2 games, but I assume is going to be massively popular today coming off of that game?
Yeah, I mean, right now we have him projected to be the second highest owned guy on the slate. I still think that's fine at $8,200. The playing time is what's really important to me. And you mentioned that. And throughout the postseason, we've seen Wiggins rebound at a high rate. That includes this series where he has nearly a 14% rebounding percentage. But even in previous series, he was up around 11, 12%. So that's been a nice bump for him. He has lost a little bit in the way of assists percentage, but the usage rate's up a little bit as well. He's averaging just shy of a fantasy point per minute overall in this series. And I don't think it's crazy to expect that from him going forward. That's pretty much what he's been, give or take throughout the season. So if you're expecting him to play 40 minutes or somewhere in that ballpark at 8,200 and, average fantasy point per minute, he's still going to look good. If you wanted to make an argument against him, it would just simply be that he is getting more ownership than anybody not named Jason Tatum. So if you wanted to go to somebody that's slightly lower owned in that mid range, like a Klay Thompson or a Draymond Green, that's fine. But it's not like either of those guys are low owned. Thompson's getting like 5% less ownership on DraftKings. Draymond's getting like 12 to 13% less. So I don't really have any issue whatsoever with Wiggins because the price tag is still very inexpensive.
He is 12,500 over on FanDuel. He is 8,200 over on DK. So amongst the secondary options of players actually third tier options, because there's one tier, Curry and Tatum. Then there's the Jalen Brown tier. Then there's kind of everybody else grouped together. Wiggins is, I assume, going to be really popular. And I think the ownership might even be selling him a little bit short just because I think the majority of people, whoever's just making a play or filling out a lineup with somebody from that mid-range, they're going to gravitate to Wiggins ahead of Smart, ahead of Thompson, ahead of Draymond Green. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Wiggins coming north of 60% ownership after last game. But relative to ownership, I know you said you don't have an issue with him, but do you think he'll be in more than half of your lineups, which is where the field is at right now?
I would think he probably is around there.
Let's see. In the build I ran, I came in a little bit underweight to him. Not crazy, though. The build I ran right before we started, I came in with 48% Wiggins. So, not that much different than the field, but slightly underweight to it. So if I had to recommend a side, I would say that it ultimately ended up being a little bit underweight to Andrew Wiggins. But as far as the other players on the Warriors go, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, they have really been overshadowed by Wiggins in the last couple of games. There is that narrative, game 6 Klay. Do you think that that's actually going to sway ownership at all?
I don't know. I mean, the fact that we did have multiple people in YouTube chat earlier in the series saying that like you couldn't play Clay yet m- means that like it's out there. But I think these days, people are using optimizers and projections enough that it shouldn't make too much of a difference. The sort of issue I have, like I don't mind getting to Clay. I still think, at 7,600, he's cheap. It is a different situation than we had earlier in the postseason where he was mid 8Ks and you were talking about a relatively low usage scoring dependent guy that was also getting a lot of ownership. Now at 7,600, you're talking about somebody likely to play 38 to 40 minutes and certainly has a very high ceiling if he gets hot. He has a 20.7% usage rate so far in this series. He's around 21 to 22% for the postseason. The issue is that he doesn't really rebound. He doesn't get assists. So if he's not knocking down his shots, and if you are seeing Steph step up offensively or seeing Wiggins step up offensively, it's very easy for Klay Thompson to kind of just disappear, and he's getting nearly 50% ownership. But he is still pretty inexpensive. So I think between him and Wiggins, where you are getting a $600 discount for Clay, but you're getting very similar ownership, I still think I prefer Wiggins just because it's a little bit harder for him to disappear. You could argue he doesn't have the same ceiling that Clay does, but he still has a high ceiling. You have to go back one game to find that. And I think the floor is just higher because he rebounds at a much higher rate. His usage rate is similar. So between the two, I do lean towards Wiggins.
And then something else too, because I know a lot of people are going to point to the rebound numbers. Obviously, it's been huge for Wiggins. He leads this series in rebounding. I think both him and Draymond are benefiting from the fact that Looney isn't starting right now. So it's not a coincidence to me. And obviously, it's not something we should expect every game. But the fact that Wiggins has had arguably his two best rebounding games of the entire season, also coinciding with Looney not starting the last two games, I don't think it's a coincidence. Do you think that that's the main reason the rebounds have come up, or is it just kind of happenstance?
I think a combination of both because he's been rebounding better throughout the postseason anyway. And then, like you said, he has rebounded even better in these games without Looney. So it makes sense, that he would get more rebounds without Looney on the floor. But overall, this postseason, he still has a 12.2% rebounding percentage compared to in the regular season. I need to pull it up, but not 12.2%. I think it was around like 10 maybe going off the top of my head. So he's seen a sizable increase one way or the other. And then, Looney being out, I think just helps it even more. In the regular season, he was at 7.5%. And then in the postseason, he's at 12.2. And so you can't attribute all of that to Looney, but I certainly don't think that hurts either.
Yeah, it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, and then you were citing the rebound rate. Something else that's just going to help is raw rebound numbers. He's playing more minutes. That's the easiest way to increase counting stats. Wiggins has played, like I said before, 43 minutes in back-to-back games. So that's certainly something that's going to increase just his counting numbers overall. The other guy here to talk about in the same price range when it comes to Golden State is going to be Draymond Green. In terms of Draymond Green versus Klay Thompson, I lean towards Draymond just because he has more ways to score his fantasy points. Klay is very much dependent on making his three-pointers. Draymond Green is kind of just dependent on not fouling out immediately. And in games where he has not fouled out immediately, he's played extended minutes and he's produced pretty well across the board. I've been betting his rebound and assist props in this series, and they've come through in the last couple of games. But once again, he fouls out last game, only plays 35 minutes the game before he gets himself into early foul trouble. He's now fouled out 3 times in the series. That ties an NBA record. Nobody in the history of the NBA has ever fouled out more than 3 times in the finals. Draymond might go out and make it 5 times and make it a record that's just impossible to break and really entrench himself in the NBA record books. But when you're projecting Draymond's minutes, how much do you have to weigh the foul issues he's had?
You have to weigh them at least, a little bit. Overall, this postseason, he's averaged 31 and a half minutes per game. That does include the game where he was ejected early. It also includes a lot of games where he's been in massive foul trouble and fouled out. So we have seen him at least able to play more minutes in this series than he was previously. The fact that he fouled out in 35 minutes last game is certainly a better outcome than you were getting in previous series where you were getting, sub 30-minute foul outs or close to it from Draymond. But at the same time, if fouls weren't a thing, you would be expecting him to play 38 to 40 minutes every night. It's not like Golden State's game plan is play Draymond Green 32, 33 minutes. It's kind of just play him as many minutes as he can without fouling out. So, if you're projecting 34, 35, 36 minutes, that does factor in the fouls because if he manages not to be in foul trouble, he's going to play several minutes more.
Yeah, and as far as ownership projections go, Draymond right now projected for 42% ownership on DK. That is overall only 5% ownership in the captain spot. Over on FanDuel, Draymond Green at 11K projected for 38% ownership overall, sub 1% in the MVP. Not that much overall in the multiplier spots. So relative to the ownership we're seeing here for Draymond, pretty modest, less than 1% in the MVP on FanDuel. On DK's captain ownership, only around 5%. Do you think he has enough of a ceiling at his current price point to make him an MVP or captain play?
I think it's kind of interesting since he is only getting 5% ownership. Like he's getting less than every other starter in the game, and he is relatively inexpensive as well. So the way I'm kind of thinking about it is on average, I don't really think he's a great captain play just because you're not getting somebody like when you talk about somebody like Clay, he can go out there and just knock down a million threes. You know, Wiggins can obviously go for 50 plus. Draymond, I guess, can, but it's a little bit less likely. You're talking about somebody with an 11% usage rate. But at the same time, you do get a little bit different build going to him at captain as well. And with this being game 6 of the finals, I don't think you're looking at a whole lot of really good cheap value that you can rely on. You know, even Gary Payton now is up to $4,200. He's the cheapest guy getting any ownership at all, and he's at like 1%. So if you go with a build where you are going Draymond at captain, I do think you get a little bit of added upside with your utility guys that you wouldn't quite get from somebody else, especially the pay up options. And then you do still have, you know, if Draymond just goes out there and gets his 10-10-10 triple double, you're in really good shape.
Yeah. And then, I mean, like you said before, which I also think is key, is a couple of things have happened. Number one, we're up to game 6 of the NBA finals. Teams aren't generally saying like, hey, let's try to change up our rotation. Like Kuminga's out of the rotation. There's no expectation all of a sudden some cheap guy that we weren't expecting ends up playing, you know, any sort of significant minutes barring blowout. But the other thing too with that happening is we've got the starters who are generally more expensive, especially guys like Tatum, Curry, Jalen Brown. They're going to be playing well north of 40 minutes. So I want to prioritize getting those guys into lineups. And there isn't that much cheap value I like. So for me personally, when I'm just running crunches and going through my lineups, I get to a lot more mid-range plays in the captain spot than I normally would. Is that a concern at all? Do you think it kind of makes sense that lineups would shake out that way?
I think it makes sense. And another reason, you know, in addition to what you and I were just saying, another reason is, you know, when you think about the fact that 22% of the captain ownership is projected to go to Tatum and then 12% is Curry, you're talking about basically a third of the field paying up for those guys at captain, which obviously is fine. They're the 2 highest projected players on the slate. But because of the lack of value, you're just going to be forced onto very, very similar roster construction if you go to those guys. I would imagine that it's going to be difficult to not have massively duped lineups unless you're just rolling the dice on guys like, you know, Pritchard, Bielitsa, random dudes off the bench and just hoping to get lucky. You know, if you're playing any semblance of a lineup that you're not expecting to take a zero, you know, not that you can really avoid dupes that easily in NBA Showdown anyway, but it's going to be even more difficult when those guys at captain are just forcing you onto the exact same build as everyone else.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, well, a couple of things. We just got news. Robert Williams, no surprise, he will play today. He's starting for the Celtics today. Also, the ownership projections are free. So if you guys want to go over to the site, which is now stochastic.com, although the old URL for now, Awesemo, does still work, you go check that out. You can see the ownership projections are free. You can see where everybody's projected because I see some people in the chat asking, what is this guy's ownership? What is this guy's ownership? Well, you go see it for yourself for free. And actually, I'll drop that link in right now into YouTube chat. So there is the ownership projections. But to the point you were making before, where there aren't that many cheap players available, one thing to also keep an eye on is the starting lineup for the Warriors. The last couple of games, they started Otto Porter Jr. ahead of Kevon Looney. Is that your expectation again for tonight?
Yes, because they've been winning. I don't know what to expect from Otto Porter Jr.'s minutes. When he moved into the starting lineup, I expected him to play into the mid-20s. He'd been doing that off the bench with decent consistency anyway. So I've been surprised, you know, that he played 15 minutes last game and he played 14 and a half minutes the game before. I guess you kind of have to just assume that's going to be the case. Like Looney is still very clearly still in the rotation, but there is certainly a path to Porter Jr. getting more minutes here at low ownership.
Yeah. So by the way, we've got this new thing, the weather in YouTube chat, where it's really more for baseball than it is for basketball because, you know, every once in a while a ceiling leaks in basketball. But for anybody asking about the weather thing, it actually is useful now when we're doing baseball shows if there's kind of weather uncertainty now, we could do exclamation mark weather and then the city. And YouTube tells us what the weather is going to be for there, but it doesn't have that much utility for basketball games. For people who are wondering why that's there, it's a new tool. It's primarily for baseball, but also apparently applies to people who are wondering what the basketball weather is going to be. And for somebody else who was asking for what movies are playing in their area, it's not going to help you with that. This is just a weather service. But so we just talked about the merits, well, at least what we think the starting lineup is going to be for the Golden State Warriors. Do you have any interest in getting Otto Porter? Because I know you said it also, I have no clue what the hell to expect from his minutes, but is there enough upside with potential minutes that would make you gravitate towards him at all?
It's kind of interesting because so I did I misspoke earlier when I talked about value guys not getting ownership. I was accidentally looking at the captain column and not the actual ownership column. But still, the point stands where you have Gary Payton getting 21%. His minutes are volatile. Like, I guess he's kind of the bull case for Otto Porter, right? Like 2 games ago, or the 2 games prior to last one, you got like 11, 12, 13 minutes from Gary Payton. His first game back, he played 26. Last game, he played 26. So it kind of just reinforces that when you're talking about the Gary Payton, Kevon Looney, Otto Porter type guys, those minutes can be all over the place, and you're not really going to know that it happened until after the fact. So if Otto Porter had played 26 minutes last game, his ownership here would be a hell of a lot higher than 10%. But because Gary Payton was the one that played 26 minutes last game, he's getting twice the ownership as Porter. On these showdown slates, I like attacking spots where I really just have no idea what's going to happen. If you give me even money and I just have to guess Otto Porter's minutes, I would assume he's in the mid-teens just because that's what we've been seeing. But on a slate with very little value, when you're talking about a guy that averages about a fantasy point per minute and he's only getting 10% ownership, that's really interesting to me just because I recognize that I don't have a good feel for how many minutes he's going to play.
Yeah, and by the way, I know you just brought this up before. You said comparing him to Gary Payton and why the bull case for Otto Porter is the minutes of Gary Payton. Well, Payton played 26 minutes last game. He played less than 10 the game before that. So who's to say it's not Gary Payton goes back to playing 10 minutes and Otto Porter plays 26 minutes this game? I have no clue, but I do know this, at least my opinion anyway. With Otto Porter being 10% owned and Gary Payton being 21%, that's a lot of confidence in the minutes from last game, just assuming they're going to be exactly the same. If the minutes are the exact same as they were 2 games ago, well, then Otto Porter probably looks like the slightly stronger play. So relative to ownership, I'd rather roster Porter than I would Payton. Doesn't mean I know what his minutes or his upside is going to look like, but I don't know the case for Payton either, and he's more popular. So I think that Otto Porter is a good GPP play as long as he remains low owned.
Yeah, exactly. If you told me, like, if Porter for some reason was 20% and Payton was 10, I would gladly play Payton. I think they're kind of comparable plays. It's just that, there's not a lot of value. And at least when you talk about somebody like Porter, there's a path to him playing more minutes. Like, I realize they're in different price ranges, but how many minutes is Andre Iguodala realistically going to play? How many minutes, Aaron Naismith's projected for 8% ownership. How many minutes is he realistically going to play? Bielitsa is getting 18% ownership. I realize all of those guys are in, a different price tier and they're allowing you to pay up for somebody like Tatum at captain if you want to. But at least with Porter, you can see him getting into the mid-20s if he plays well and he's not relying on, like 1 or 2 guys ahead of him to get hurt or to foul out or something.
Yeah, and then I mean, you mentioned some of these really cheap guys on Golden State, and the one that actually is picking up ownership today is Bielitsa. He's projected for 18% ownership over on DraftKings. When it comes to FanDuel, people aren't going to be rostering Bielitsa because it's just different salary structures. So Bielitsa's 7K, but you got guys like Porter 7,500, Payton 7,500. So Bielitsa is more of a talking point exclusively to DraftKings. If I had to roster somebody sub 2K, Bielitsa would be that guy, but I still don't really have that much desire to roster Bielitsa because his minutes in this series, while they have been greater than anybody else who's around that 1K range, he's not doing shit for fantasy purposes. Last game, 5 minutes, 1.25 fantasy points. The game before that, 9 minutes, 2.75. The game before that, 4 minutes, 1.5 fantasy points. So if I absolutely had to roster somebody sub 2K and you ask me who's the most likely to score fantasy points, the answer is Bielitsa, but it's still hard for me to trust him. So where does he fit in the mix for you? Because obviously he enables us to spend up for the stars more often, but I don't expect much from him from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. For one, like, I agree with you. He's the one that I would go to first if I have to. Even though he hasn't done a lot fantasy wise in this series, he is actually a good point per minute guy. You compare him to somebody like Andre Iguodala, who is not. Their average playing time projection is about the same. So Bielitsa is just going to project better. That said, he is getting twice the ownership of Iguodala, and sort of like we were talking about with Curry versus Tatum, Iguodala is not a 2-1 dog to outscore him. But the bigger takeaway for me is just it goes back to what I was saying about Tatum and Curry at captain. If Nemanja Bjelica is going to pull 18% ownership, such a massive percentage of those Bjelica lineups are going to have Tatum or Curry at captain. Like, he's the kind of guy that you would like to throw in there and then, just say, oh, well, if Draymond fouls out in 28 minutes, Bjelica wins me the slate. But if that happens, you're still competing with such a high percentage of very, very similar lineups or, massively duped lineups that to me, I would really like to get away from this price range where you have a combined, so 18% to Bjelica, 9% to Iguodala, so 27%. Naismith pulling 8% gets you up to 35%. Like 1/3 of the field plus is rostering somebody that is likely to play 4 minutes or less. I would like to just not be there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same for me when I ran my lineups before. And that's the other reason also when I was saying before that my preference for this slate is to build lineups with captains in the mid-range. It's to avoid playing nonsense like Nemanja Bjelica in 30% of my lineups or whatever, because the reason that Bjelica ends up being really popular, or not really popular, but picking up as much ownership as he is for today on DK is because people are trying to jam Curry and Tatum at the captain spot. And it's just kind of hard to fit them in on this slate. It doesn't mean I don't think they have upside, but I'm just hoping we get a big game from, like a Draymond, a Clay, a Wiggins, a Smart, a Horford, something like that. And I'll just have a different looking lineup because I think for me personally, that has more upside than just plugging in Bjelica and hoping for 10 fantasy points.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really enjoying chat right now. Somebody's very upset that I said Byron Buxton was a good play yesterday and he didn't get a hit.
Well, how could you do that? Everybody knows that baseball is the most predictable of sports.
Yeah, Byron Buxton's a good hitter is a hot take.
Yeah, Byron Buxton. I mean, Byron Buxton is one of the best players in baseball. I think if the season ended today, he'd be a top MVP candidate. Is it Adams' fault he didn't get a hit yesterday? Probably, but I mean, he's been one of the best hitters in baseball over the last couple of years. So
me and Josh went back and forth. Somebody had asked Josh for like a beat the street pick, and he picked Whit Merrifield, and I gave him all kinds of shit because, like, how is Whit Merrifield the most likely guy to get a hit on the slate? Merrifield comes up and immediately gets a bunt single in his first at bat, and then Buxton goes over.
Yeah, that seems like Adam's fault to me. I'm on chat side in this one. Byron Buxton sucks. I don't know why Adam thinks otherwise. Who's better, Byron Buxton at baseball or Nemanja Bjelica at basketball?
It's close, but I'm gonna lean Buxton.
More fantasy points.
Maybe not after yesterday.
More fantasy points per minute for Bjelica.
That is true. The better question is, who do you think is actually better at basketball, Nemanja Bjelica or Byron Buxton?
Byron Buxton, without hesitation.
I'm pretty sure he was actually I don't know about basketball. He was a legit football prospect.
I think I remember that as well, but whatever. If you guys don't like Adam, you're probably correct in not liking him. Rest of the Golden State Warriors guys to talk about today. The one guy here that has really fallen by the wayside in recent games is Jordan Poole. And I'm not a massive fan of Jordan Poole's basketball game. I've mentioned this before throughout the finals. He's very scoring dependent. And now we've gotten to a point where Gary Payton's just been ahead of him in the rotation in more games than not as of late. So, Jordan Poole, he's hit the half court shots that have accounted for big highlights in the last couple of games. I believe it was a half quarter he hit at the end of game 2. He hit also a really deep shot at the end of the third quarter, I think it was last game, to put the Warriors up 1, if I remember correctly. But other than that, we're just not seeing all that much out of Jordan Poole. He only ends up playing 14 minutes last game. Gary Payton ends up closing the game while Jordan Poole sits on the bench last time out. Do you see reason to get to Jordan Poole here? Because I find it really difficult for me to project him well.
I find it difficult as well. He's only getting 20% ownership, so you could make the case where, in some small percentage of the time, Jordan Poole just has a massive offensive game. But the problem that I see with that is that when you have Stephen Curry playing a ton of minutes and you have Klay Thompson playing a ton of minutes, it's not like you want Jordan Poole out there taking shots away from those guys. Andrew Wiggins obviously plays a a big role as well. But then also, if the game's competitive or Golden State is leading, Gary Payton's a much better defender, whereas Jordan Poole's a liability. So he's someone that, like, he's a good sixth man. He's a good scorer off the bench. But if this game goes remotely close to the way Golden State would like, they don't need Jordan Poole out there chucking up shots. So that's kind of the issue. And even in these games previously where Gary Payton only played 11 or 12 minutes, it's not like you were getting a lot for Poole. In a couple of games ago, you got 11 and a half minutes for Payton. Poole played 24 and a half, but like 5 minutes of that was garbage time. So you're still talking about 5 minutes realistically. The next game, Payton played about 10 minutes. You still only got 20 for Poole. So it's not even like you have a direct negative correlation between Payton and Poole, where if Payton plays 10, Poole's going to play 26 and vice versa. You're still just getting 20 minutes from Poole quite a bit. So I'll acknowledge that, he is a good scorer. He is a good point per minute guy. If somehow he gets 26, 28, 30 minutes, he's going to be a good play at 5,800. I just don't think he's that likely to get there. And he's still getting, he's still rostered by like 1/5 of the field.
Yeah, we're on the same page there when it comes to Poole. It's hard to give him the minutes, and this isn't a great matchup for him either, because just think, if you're putting Jordan Poole on the court at the same time as Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, which is what has to happen at times if you actually want Jordan Poole to play an amount of minutes that makes him viable at his price point. So let's say you're looking for 26 minutes out of Jordan Poole. This is what would have to happen. He'd have to share the court with Curry and Klay at some point, which then it's like, all right, who's guarding Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum? Because one of them ends up with a massive mismatch in that kind of scenario. So I don't think that this is a good spot for Jordan Poole in terms of what the matchup is. I think that's also why Steve Kerr's gravitated a little bit more towards Gary Payton in recent games. Poole, somebody who I'm not really going to get much exposure to today. I'd rather look elsewhere. The only other player to mention here, and this kind of goes hand in hand with some of our Otto Porter takes earlier, but how are you going to approach Kevon Looney, who also has minutes that are really difficult to project? And last game, he got into early foul trouble, so I don't think we should take those 17 minutes to be, just for sure what his playing time is going to be. But at the same time, too, he goes from a starting role where he also played 17 minutes in his last start to coming off the bench and playing a series high 28 minutes. Then on the bench again last game, foul trouble, 17 minutes. How the hell do you project Looney's minutes in this spot?
I mean, I think that's a good question. What I will say is I think, like, when you compare him to Jordan Poole, at similar ownership, I lean towards Looney. And the reason is that they're comparable point per minute guys. Looney's a 1+ fantasy point per minute guy, but it's easier to come up with a scenario, I think, where Looney gets more minutes, especially because we've seen it happen 2 games ago. And then even last game, he picked up those 4 fouls in the first half, never came back, or 3 fouls, whatever it was. He played a pretty substantial second half rotation where if you had been able to just kind of replicate that in the first half, he still is getting mid-20s in minutes. Like, he finished that game with almost 17 minutes. He only played 4 minutes in the first half. If he plays 13 per half, or 12 to 13 per half, you're still talking about 24 to 26 minutes from him. So I think it's easier to see a path to him getting those minutes than it is Poole. If this were a situation like you were getting with, Payton versus Porter or Tatum versus Curry, a captain, where Looney was projected for twice the ownership of Poole, I'd start to be interested and just say, okay, maybe something weird happens and Poole plays more minutes. But you're basically getting even money on them, and Looney just appears to have the clearer path to the playing time.
Yeah, it's really difficult to project. If anybody tells you with confidence they know how many minutes Looney or Porter are playing, they're overconfident for no reason. It's really hard to predict. There's a wide range of outcomes. There's only one sure thing in tonight's game, and that is if you sign up at BetMGM for the first time. They're going to give you $200 for free. This is all you have to do. You either sign up using the link in the description box below, or you sign up using the promo code LBLBETS. And when you place a $10 bet on tonight's NBA game, they're going to give you $200 as soon as anybody hits a 3 in the game. It's going to happen. Somebody's hit a 3 at least once in every single NBA game so far this year. If nobody hits a 3, then you hit up Eric Lindquist on Twitter and he will PayPal you that money instantly. So $200 for free when you sign up at BetMGM using our promo code LBLBETS. Getting back to the Warriors, though, we've covered everybody that matters to me. Is there anything else you see here, whether it's Andre Iguodala or somebody else off the Warriors bench, do you think is worth taking stabs on?
Not really. I mean, I kind of alluded to Iggy when we were talking about Bjelica, where he's at least, he's getting half the ownership, so probably a little bit more preferable to me, even though they project similarly. But, this is game 6 of the NBA Finals. There's just not going to be much that you can pick from the bench unless you think multiple guys are fouling out or getting hurt or something.
Yeah. 4 minutes for Iguodala last game, scored 3 fantasy points. The game before he was out of the rotation. Game before that, 2 minutes, 0 fantasy points. It's really hard to get behind him. So let's move on over to the Boston side of the game. And I mean, I'll start by asking you about Jason Tatum. I know we kind of already covered him when it came to Steph Curry. With Jason Tatum, him and Curry, they're on a price point of their own on both FanDuel and DraftKings. I have Tatum projected a little bit higher. You were on the same page. But one thing we did note is that he is going to be much more popular in the captain spot than anybody else on DraftKings. On FanDuel, also, he is a very popular MVP. So 37% owned in the MVP for Tatum. Over on DK, 22.3% owned in the captain spot. So the only thing we really have left to talk about when it comes to Tatum, is that a number you want to be over or underweight to the field, Av?
In the captain spot, I think it's likely I end up coming in underweight. It doesn't have to do with Tatum. It so much as it has to do with what I can do with the rest of my lineup. You know, kind of like we were talking about with these guys on Golden State. If I'm going to have to use relatively popular Nemanja Bjelica or 10% owned Andre Iguodala to have good lineups, you know, lineups that project well with Jason Tatum at captain, I'd rather just be going to these guys in the mid-range that are getting half the ownership, build better lineups around them, and hope that, you know, Bjelica scores like 3 fantasy points and I have an advantage there. And, you know, obviously that Tatum doesn't go for like 70 and just make it so it doesn't matter. But, you know, that's sort of the issue I run into. It's not Tatum himself, because he is the top projected guy on the slate. We have him projected 7 points higher than Curry. I have no issue with that. And the main reason, you know, we talked about it before, but the main reason is you're expecting 5 to 6 minutes more from Jason Tatum than from Steph Curry. And they are similar point per minute guys, even though Curry does have the edge in this series. So from a range of outcome standpoint, Curry certainly can beat Tatum. He's still got a massive ceiling. But from a median projection standpoint, Tatum clearly has the edge. So I don't have any issue with like him being the most popular captain. It's just that I don't like what the rest of my lineups are likely to look like around him. I think it's going to be pretty difficult not to be duped a lot and to have, you know, any positive expectation really on a lot of the Jason Tatum captain lineups. You know, when you're talking about, you know, oh, cool, I got first place and I lost money in the tournament. Like, I think you're going to see a lot of that on a lot of Jason Tatum captain lineups.
Yeah, for sure. Like we're talking about, for 22.3% owned. Ownership projections are free today, guys. So if you want to go check out the site, look at the ownership projections we're looking at, which are massively important for me when I'm playing single game NBA slates. Really useful tool to use. Also, while you're here, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Helps us out a whole bunch and helps us put out free content. The next guy to talk about is Jalen Brown. He has no comparison point. He's $9,800 over on DraftKings, $14,000 over on FanDuel. So there's nobody priced within $1,000 of him on either site. And this is just the case that's been with Jalen Brown for the entire series. I don't even have analysis for it. Just if you have the amount of salary left to get to Jalen Brown in lineups, you're probably getting to Jalen Brown because there's nobody else close to him. He just becomes an unavoidable play. And by the way, I think he's a good play anyway. I project him fairly well, but he's particularly unavoidable because of where he's priced and nobody else being around him. So how do you approach Jason Tatum today at his price point?
Jalen Brown.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Jalen Brown.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's kind of just like, if you have the money, then obviously you're going to play him and feel good about it. He played 44 minutes last game. He's averaging a fantasy point per minute in the series. He has a 27% usage rate, you know, very high ceiling, even though we haven't really seen him put up a massive fantasy game yet. He's still certainly got the ability. But one thing that I think is kind of interesting with him is that, again, when you think about it kind of from a duping standpoint in these large field tournaments, I think he kind of stands out as like one guy where you could potentially really increase the potential uniqueness / lower the number of dupes of your lineup if you do have a lineup where you could get to Jalen Brown, but instead you just play Wiggins, Smart, Thompson, Draymond, whoever, just hope they beat Jalen Brown. That's certainly not the most likely thing to happen. You know, he obviously projects better than those guys, but because there's nobody else in that price range, you're just going to get a lot of lineups, I think, or like a lot of builds where if Jalen Brown fits, people play him. If he doesn't, they don't. I think one way to get unique or more unique, closer to unique, is to just like, even in some of your builds where you could fit Jalen Brown, to just leave that money on the table and play, you know, a guy that's a tier below him.
By the way, you guys broke the weather bot in chat. You guys are asking for weather from so many places that the weather bot had to go into a refractory period. So now mandatory cooldown in effect due to excessive usage. It's a fake thing. How is that even possible? You guys just asked for so many weather that it took itself out of commission. But after looking at this, Jordan, I think we might need to rethink how we use the weather bot in YouTube chat going forward, because things getting a little Yeah, it's getting a lot more burn than I thought it was going to the point where we've now got it in its refractory period. So we'll talk about the rest of the game. But first, today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you guys are signing up at Prize Picks for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo. It's still the same promo codes. We haven't changed those yet. But when you use the promo code Awesemo, you're going to get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. Really good way to help build your bankroll, and also a fun way to get some extra skin in the game when it comes to this NBA Finals. So I'm going to pull up some of our projections right now when it comes to Prize Picks, and I want to see what also has changed throughout the day. Because one thing that did really stand out to me, last I looked, the fantasy point projection for Tatum, 45 fantasy points for Tatum. I like the over on that quite a bit. Adam, do you have a lean on over or under 45 fantasy points for Jason Tatum?
Over. We have him projected for 52, give or take. Yeah, I mean, 45 is basically a fantasy point per minute in this game, I think, which is a very low expectation for Jason Tatum.
Yeah, same page for me. And I really think a lot of these Boston guys make a whole lot of sense. I don't think that Prize Picks is projecting these players' minutes correctly. The over-under for fantasy points for Tatum is 45. Brown is 39. Horford is 26. I like the overs for all of those guys. So I think a good way to build some of those Prize Picks cards is to load up on some of these Celtics guys that I think are being a little bit underprojected, because a lot of them I think we're looking at well north of 40 minutes. And I think one guy to talk about here that is maybe a little bit harder to project than some of the other Boston guys is Al Horford, because Horford played extremely well earlier in the postseason, and we just haven't seen that kind of production from him today. I like Horford as a more contrarian mid-range play. I also like getting to him in the captain spot. Do you have any Al Horford takes or any particular reason why you think his production has dropped so much in this series?
I mean, I think it's just not quite as good a series for him from a defensive standpoint. And so I think it's less necessary that he be on the floor constantly. I still think that in competitive games, you're likely to be getting 33 to 35 minutes. He's still a good point per minute guy, still has plenty of upside, but it's not the same matchup as, when you're going up against Miami or you're going up against Giannis, where you really want Horford out there. In this spot, it's a little bit easier to, either, one, Robert Williams, if he's healthy and he played 30 minutes last game, to take some minutes, but also for, Derrick White potentially to play more if Williams isn't getting those minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing too, because you just brought up Robert Williams, is Time Lord's looked way healthier in this series than he did at points earlier in the playoffs. So that's done a couple of things. Number one, the Celtics just haven't had to have these games where they're playing Al Horford, 42, 43 minutes, which was kind of commonplace earlier in the playoffs. But the last few games for Horford, 33 minutes, 28, 30, 28. If you remember some of the earlier games he played in the postseason, like Game 7 against the Heat, he played 44 minutes. Games earlier in the playoffs against the Bucks, he was also pretty regularly playing 38 to 40 minutes, sometimes also more. Game 1 against Brooklyn, he played 42. But I think the return of Time Lord actually being healthy has also meant that the Celtics don't need to run Al Horford into the ground. So when it comes to guys like Robert Williams, Al Horford, do you have a lean of which of the two Celtics big men you prefer?
I lean towards Williams just because I guess he's not going to play more minutes, but I'm with you. I mean, he's coming off of a game where he played 30 minutes. He is $200 more expensive. He's getting slightly less ownership. So it's not a strong lean one way or the other, but I do give a little bit of an advantage to Williams here.
Yeah, overall, I project Williams higher, but I do think that the ceiling for Horford might be a little bit higher, just because I think there's potential for Horford to play 40 plus minutes. I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but I think it's a potential outcome. Whereas Robert Williams, I think there's close to 0% chance he plays 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Like, it's more likely that you get, even if Horford doesn't get to 40, it's relatively likely that you get like 34 minutes from Horford, 26 from Williams or something, than that Robert Williams goes out there and plays like 36 plus.
Yeah, so in terms of the utility play, and this is weird because they're priced kind of the same on DK, but as a utility play, I prefer Robert Williams. As a captain play, I prefer Al Horford, just because I think we might see him get those minutes he played earlier in the playoffs, because it's Game 6. The Celtics are down 3-2. They absolutely need to win tonight. they might determine the best way to do that is to play Al Horford all of the minutes and maybe limit the minutes of guys like Peyton Pritchard or Grant Williams off the bench in favor of more Horford. So we'll see how that goes. But the other guy who's also obviously been really important for Boston, Marcus Smart, and he's also been a little bit disappointing for a lot of times in this series. He has a couple of games where he played fairly well. Game 4 and game 3, I think it was, where he put up 39 fantasy points, but only 26 last game, only 11 in game 2. As far as Marcus Smart goes, I'm not getting a ton of exposure to him in my build. And it's not necessarily an issue with Marcus Smart as much as I have Andrew Wiggins projected better at a similar price point. And then I also think that guys priced cheaper than him have comparable ceilings and projections when it comes to, Draymond Green or Klay Thompson. So as a result, I don't find paying up the extra money for Marcus Smart to be all that necessary. It doesn't mean he's a fade for me. I just come in underweight to the field on him. But do you have any Marcus Smart takes? He's currently projected for 52% ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's projected for 38.5% ownership.
I think the 10% captain ownership is kind of interesting because Smart's another guy where as long as he can avoid foul trouble and doesn't get hurt or anything, you should expect him to play 40 plus minutes in a game 6. He's averaged 0.87 DraftKings points per minute in this series. You could certainly, see him do more than that. He gives you a lot of volatility because of his ability to pick up defensive stats as well. That's something that it's not predictable, it's not as reliable, I should say. But it certainly gives you a very, very high ceiling. Only 10% captain ownership, and then accessing, that mid-range build, mid-range captain build that we've been talking about, I think is pretty appealing. I'm with you though, where at 52% total ownership, I don't really care one way or the other. 42%, utility ownership. I think that's good. I think it's fine. Clay's a little bit less expensive. He's pulling similar ownership though. Draymond's a little bit less expensive. He's also pulling pretty similar ownership. So I don't really feel strongly one way or the other there, but I do think that the 10% captain ownership, which is a little bit lower than Wiggins, it is lower than Brown. That's kind of interesting to me just because you could conceivably get a 40 plus minute Marcus Smart game here.
Here's something else I find difficult when looking at the Celtics is, so Jason, I wouldn't even say difficult because I feel pretty confident in this. Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Marcus Smart are all playing massive minutes. Robert Williams is probably playing close to 30 minutes. Al Horford, at a minimum, is playing mid 30s minutes with the potential to play 40 plus. As a result, I don't project all of the bench guys all that well for Boston. So Derrick White, who's been priced up a little bit in this series now, I don't think that there's that much playing time available to him. He played 21 minutes last game. I think there's a pretty good chance we see around that mark from him again today. Where does Derrick White fit in the mix for you? Because I kind of view him similarly to Jordan Poole.
I like him a little bit more than Poole because I think it's easier to see where the minutes come from. I think you could see, basically like 2 games ago where Horford played 28 minutes, White got into like the mid 30s. Robert Williams still played 31 that game. Not that I think it's likely White gets to 35, but I don't think that Horford has to play as big a role here in this matchup. And so, if you do get a 31 minute game from Robert Williams, you could conceivably just get, 28 to 30 minutes from Horford and Derrick White playing more, especially if he's playing well. I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but I think it's more likely than Jordan Poole playing like Andrew Wiggins off the floor or something. I don't think that's happening. So, from that standpoint, I'm interested in White. Like, I agree with you that his median is probably low to mid 20s. Like looking back over his last 3 games, 23 and a half, 35, 21. I would certainly lean closer to that 23, 24 mark, but I do think there's a clearer path to how he gets more minutes than somebody like Jordan Poole.
Yeah, and then the other bench guy for the Celtics who's played a significant role at times in the playoffs has been Grant Williams, but he's more or less been phased out of the rotation in this series. He has not played more than, let's see, the most minutes he's played is 20.9 in any individual game. So, right around 21 minutes, that's the most playing time we've seen out of Grant Williams. Is there any reason to think that could change, or are we just kind of stuck getting like 16 to 20 minutes out of Grant Williams and kind of shitty fantasy production?
That's what I expect going forward. Like, I guess the bull case for him would be he just starts draining threes and they can't take him off the floor. That certainly could happen, but you can't count on it. The one thing that is nice though is that he is inexpensive now and he's not getting much ownership. He's $3,800 on DraftKings, only pulling 10% utility ownership. I mean, again, like he's not the same price tier as Bjelica, but if he's going to get like half the ownership of Bjelica, I would certainly like to find ways to get to Grant Williams instead. He's at least a actual part of this rotation. So I am kind of surprised, given the lack of value on this slate, at how little ownership Williams is getting. And like, even if you compare him to Gary Payton, like I like Gary Payton fine at 4,200. He's a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy that has a path to playing mid 20s, but he's twice as popular as Otto Porter. He's twice as popular as Grant Williams, who's less expensive. In tournaments, I like the idea of getting to Williams.
Yeah, and then one other thing to mention when it comes to Grant Williams is here's where the upside would come from. If the Celtics are trailing in the fourth quarter and they need to get trailing significantly, if they're down by 2 points, it doesn't really matter. But let's say they're down by 10 in the fourth quarter, they're going to need to get 3-point shooting on the court. And Grant Williams, that's the one thing he's capable of doing. They've gone with Derrick White in that scenario in this series, but the reason is because for whatever the Warriors have decided they are so unconcerned with Derrick White from three. I don't know. I've seen Derrick White take a three that hasn't been totally uncontested. He shoots threes with nobody anywhere around him in this series. But
except for game one, he was just draining contested three after contested three.
No, I think game one, I think he only had like one contested 3-point attempt in game one. Like they were mostly wide open.
No, it was everybody else was wide open. White had a couple that were just ridiculous shots.
Maybe, but either for the most part, he's taken a lot of open 3-point attempts. And if he isn't making them this game and they're trailing, like that's the role I could see Grant Williams stepping into, because it's either going to be Grant Williams or Derrick White on the court in place of Robert Williams, should the Celtics be down double digits. But one thing that also kind of doesn't make me want to play that game script is the Celtics are favored in this game. So it's not quite as likely to happen as it is in other games. But to the point you mentioned before, I would rather play Grant Williams than Nemanja Bjelica for sure, if that's a possibility. We're talking about Bjelica's fantasy production this series not being great. It hasn't been great for Grant Williams either, but still he scored 11 fantasy points last game. He's had a game with 18 fantasy points. He had a game with 11 fantasy points also in game two. And I mean, if Grant Williams goes out and scores 12, 13 fantasy points, that's probably more than I expect from anybody else who's priced under 4K.
Yeah, exactly. And you were kind of getting to it. Like I had mentioned that he can get more minutes if he's just draining threes, but there are other ways for him to get on the floor. One is that, like you said, they're playing from behind, and they, maybe they want his 3-point shooting instead of Derrick White. Maybe Al Horford / Robert Williams get hurt or in foul trouble. You're not projecting that or anticipating that, but it's certainly a non-zero chance, and that would open up minutes for Grant Williams. Williams can do so many things well that it's easy for him to just slide into the rotation, basically, if anybody ahead of him gets in foul trouble or gets hurt. So I do like the volatility that he gives you. On average, you're probably getting 16 to 20 minutes, but there's just so many various ways for him to pick up more minutes in any one given game.
And then the only other player who we've not yet talked about that's regularly been in the Celtics rotation this series is Peyton Pritchard, but him, once again, is not playing all the many minutes. And I don't think he's going to fall out of the rotation entirely today, but I do think it's a possibility. He only played 5 minutes last game. If the Celtics are going to play Jalen Brown or Jason Tatum close to 48 minutes, which is a possibility, I think there's a chance that neither Tatum nor Brown come off the court today. That would really cut into Peyton Pritchard's minutes. So Pritchard, given where he's priced, I find him difficult to get to. Do you have any interest in him at all?
I find it difficult as well. He's cheap enough where it's kind of Bjelica-esque, where Pritchard, if he plays well, could very easily beat that price tag. But he's a little bit more appealing, I think, than Bjelica in that he's got a not even clearer path to minutes, but like it would be less surprising if Pritchard plays 10 to 12 minutes than what if Bjelica does. But the thing for me is you could certainly see Boston just really tighten their rotation here. Pritchard didn't step on the floor in the second half last game. You could easily see the same sort of thing here where Peyton Pritchard's minutes just go to some combination of Derrick White, Grant Williams, one of those guys basically. And that's something that I'd said earlier on in the series I expected to happen as the series gets further on. We saw it in game 5. Shouldn't be surprising at all if you see it in game 6. And he's getting 14% ownership. So again, if you were talking about 5, 6, 8% ownership going to Peyton Pritchard, I would say, okay, I'm pretty confident that he's not playing a lot of minutes here, but I certainly could be wrong. But at 14% ownership, it's like, what's the reward? Like basically, if I am wrong and he does play 12, 13, 14 minutes, cool, I get to compete with 14% of the field and have very, very similar builds to them. So, it's another one where with the ownership where it is, I would prefer to just not need to get to that price range if I can avoid it.
One more question to ask you, and then we're actually going to be wrapping up shortly. We've got 6 minutes left. Then we're going to be passing it over to Josh and Lofty doing the NBA Live Before Lock. And then, of course, afterwards, don't forget, go check them out on Playback, free to use service. And we're going to have Josh and Lofty going to be streaming the game, watching it alongside you guys. The game is going to be up on the screen while they're talking. So cool thing that we're trying to build up, and hopefully we could do more sports and find other cool utilities for playback. And if you guys have any ideas of stuff you'd like to see us do on playback, let me know on Twitter because I'd be interested to hear that. But why the hell is Aaron Nesmith picking up 8% ownership on DK today?
I don't know. I guess because he's just 1K flat and it's like a placeholder. Like last year when the pricing was tight, you got to a point where it was like in cash especially, it was like optimal to just take a zero. But last year, if I remember correctly, you could have like $200. It wasn't 1,000. So like at the floor. So I don't know. That's my guess is that it's just like it's a 1K placeholder, and like of the 1K guys, he's the most likely to get on the floor. But I also have no idea, and I don't think he actually ends up being 8%.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, to me, there's no difference between Aaron Nesmith or like Sam Hauser, for instance, two shitty bench guys that aren't going to be in the rotation unless it's a blowout. So
I think Naismith and Kuminga would be the 1K guys. Naismith, Kuminga, Moody are the 1K guys where like they're an injury away from maybe getting on the floor. Like I don't think Sam Hauser is ever playing outside of garbage time. If Grant Williams, I don't know, rolls his ankle in the first quarter or something, you could see Naismith pick up like 6 minutes.
Yeah, I guess not enough probability for me to play him in 8% of lineups, but yeah, Nesmith is oddly picking up some ownership. Kuminga not expected for any ownership. And by the way, this is the first game of the entire series that people haven't asked me if Kuminga is going to be in the rotation. So watch this be the game where somebody gets hurt. Kuminga scores a bunch of fantasy points because everybody's been dying to play him in this series.
Yeah. And so just to clarify what I was saying, like I don't anticipate playing these 1K guys, but if you do have a build where you need one and you want to go that route, I just think that like you should be probably going to one of the guys that is like next man up, whether it's Naismith, Kuminga, Moody. Somebody said Tice. I mean, you could make that case, but I think that Boston's not really enamored with playing two bigs a ton or as much in this series anyway. If you got like Robert Williams in foul trouble or Horford in foul trouble, I think you would just be getting more Grant Williams stepping up. Like I think they'd be more likely in an emergency to go with a wing than go with Tice.
By the way, if you guys didn't see, I just dropped in the link for the playback link for the show that Loughran and Josh are going to be doing together later. It's kind of a roundabout way of doing it just because of weird YouTube rules. It's nothing that we could do about, but just because of the way that YouTube works, we post a link to our site, and then the link on our site has a link over to playback. So that's the link to go watch Josh and Loughran later on after the game starts and watch along with them. A few minutes left here, but I want to ask you now just about your favorite captain and MVP plays. And, you know, when it comes to FanDuel, and I know that you're probably just nauseous that I'm asking you about FanDuel at all, but if you were playing on FanDuel, Adam, and you had to play somebody on the MVP spot who was not Brown, Curry, or Tatum, who would you go to? Because any lineup you build that doesn't have one of those three is going to be somewhat contrarian.
Clay, Smart, Wiggins, I think would be the next tier. You don't get the 3-point bonus on FanDuel, so it's tougher on Clay. But like those guys at least have some semblance of ability to just go for a ridiculous game. You know, you get Clay knocking down 10 threes, you get Smart picking up 6 steals or something ridiculous. You get Wiggins just, I don't know, going for like 30 and 12 or something. Like all things that are very unlikely to happen, but at least possible.
I would go with Draymond just because he's 0.8% owned, whereas Smart's projected for 5% ownership. And this is also solely because of the FanDuel scoring. It's not that crazy to think Draymond had a 4-steal game 2 games ago. You know, you get like 4 steals, 2 blocks from Draymond. He just puts up a bunch of fantasy points. Just because he's less than 1% owned, that's something I could get behind. And then same question I'm going to ask you for DraftKings. If you're looking to play somebody at the captain spot who isn't Tatum or Curry, where else do you go? And I know Curry's not really projected for all that much captain ownership right now. 11.7% is pretty modest. But if you were going elsewhere, captain over on DK to make somewhat different looking of a lineup and save yourself some salary, what would you gravitate towards?
Outside of Tatum and Curry?
Yeah.
So I like Marcus Smart. I mean, he's still 10%. And then Draymond at 5%, I think is still just interesting because he's inexpensive. You do have that triple-double upside, even though he has struggled a bit from a fantasy standpoint in this series. And he's cheap enough where I think it opens up a lot of other stuff in your lineup.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. There's a lot of guys that I think are worth mixing and matching, although even on DK for me, I'm going to go with, I think Draymond Green and Al Horford. Those are two guys I gravitate towards relative to their ownership. It's a very low probability of success play, but both of them projected for about 5% ownership. If Draymond avoids foul trouble, he could put up a triple-double and end up playing a bunch of minutes. And Al Horford, too. I think he's the ceiling to play 42 minutes. Hasn't done in this series, but we saw it earlier in the postseason. So those are my contrarian captain plays. Guys, that does it for us. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, but also don't go anywhere. Josh and Laffy are up next for Live Before Lock.
going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com. Oh, sorry, Stochastic.com. Yeah, a little name change action there. We'll get it changed up on the YouTube soon enough. Don't want people to forget about us, not know where to find us. Live Before Lock, presented by Prize Picks. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitter, joined by Joshua Engleman at Josh Engleman, repping the PP shirt. Little Prize Picks going on.
I am.
Showing some love. Last game of the series tonight, man. What's going on?
Nothing, man. I'm happy. Earlier today, I got a lot to talk about. Earlier today, I was just in the kitchen, prepping some dinner, just in my own head. And I thought to myself, like, there's probably a lot of people out there that woke up today like, Klay Thompson playing in game 6. Today's the day to play him as a captain. Today's the day where he's going to go crazy. And I just thought to myself, like, oh, well, that's I know who's not a winner when you wake up thinking that stuff. And sure enough, right before we go live, where's it at? I lost it already. Clay has a history of showing up in game 6. Adam's favorite boy, old Frankie over there. Just chef's kiss on top of everything that I've been thinking all day.
What's your prerogative, to come in and just shit on chat to start off the show?
Yes, of course. If you woke up today and thought I can roster more Klay Thompson today because it's game 6, as if that matters in any way, shape, or form, just send your money directly to me or to like a charity or something, whatever you want to do. Just don't bother putting it into DraftKings or FanDuel because you're going to lose it.
So you're fading Klay in the captain spot tonight?
I don't even know.
I'm just
don't have a single share of him.
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Can I speak to something slightly more important, a little more pressing?
Yes.
Only 202 likes right now with 1,150 people watching. What?
It's terrible.
What?
It's terrible. Well, like obviously Adam wasn't asking for likes before this, so it is a lot of heavy lifting.
I think Adam was
Greg.
I think the only thing Adam was asking for was a way out.
Yes, for sure.
Hit that thumbs up. I mean, I think we probably pull 400 easy, but if you haven't done so, take a second. Soothing Sounds of the World says, Jesus, Laffy, likes are earned. Yeah, that's why I'm asking you for it, because we're about to earn them, pal. We just started here. We just popped on 1 minute ago. So hit that thumbs up. You forgot, no big deal. Takes a single second. Atone for your sins, my friends. Just hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Let's make life a little brighter around this way and get started. I mean, 300. We're at 275. We got 25 to go. I know there's 25 of you out there that are like, all right, I'll be gratuitous for a day and do something nice. Appreciate you guys though. Boom. Hitting 300. Easy. Just like that. All right. Let's hit a super chat first, and then let's talk basketball. We had a great strategy show this morning. A lot of fun. We did. I think we got granular, Josh. We got granular.
We did. And I've got a follow-up and everything. I'm ready to go, man. I'm in for this slate.
Okay.
I wasn't going to mess with I was happy just playing the process show contest that I was going to do. I went on like an hour and a half ago thinking, all right, I'm going to max the big GPP because I was just feeling good about this game, but it was already filled.
Any other ones?
For what?
You're saying you're going to max the big GPP?
I was going to, and by the time I got there, it was already filled.
Yeah, but there's probably the other one that's still like 300K.
I don't like the pay structure.
Okay. Oh, okay.
It's not good.
Larry said, Laffy, everything okay? You haven't brought up the overlords and agents. Yeah, they backed the fuck off, man. They saw what was going on here, John. No, I just got to change up. You got to keep it fresh. But yeah, if you want to hit the thumbs up to help us ward off those YouTube overlords, then that's appreciated too. Freddie, do you like Post Malone, Laffy? I actually, when he came out with, I got allergies, man. When he came out with that White Iverson, remember that White Iverson song?
Yes. I was like, mean like his first track?
Yeah. I was like, who is this goof? Davis Maddock. Davis Maddock and I still work together, and he was listening. He was going to put. I was like, what are you doing? And then I was like, you know what? He's actually I even told Atom, because Atom was. I was like, he's kind of talented, actually. I have to hand it to him. He did that Nirvana full set Nirvana cover for, was it COVID relief, or I think it was.
I don't remember.
It was for something, and it was fantastic. So newfound respect for Posty. Not really my type of music, but I do have some respect for him.
I'm a fan.
I was listening to straight metal before this show to hype myself up. The best metal band ever. I even tried to get Jordan into him. When I see him in Chicago, I'm going to get him listening to him. Meshuggah. Oh my God, dude.
Nah, I'm good.
Oh my God. Just fantastic. Fantastic. If
me.
you know, you know. Like if
for me.
If you know, you know.
Nah.
You ever have no motivation to work out or to do something, put them on. Not only will you want to run through a wall, you might try to kill somebody. Brian Rizzo with the super chat. Do you like this lineup to win money on FanDuel? MVP, Curry, Star, Brown, Pro, Wiggins, utility, Peyton, utility, Horford.
No.
Curry, Brown, Wiggins, Peyton, Horford on FanDuel, Josh.
I don't like it.
No? What don't you like about it? Too
Curry
chalky?
Curry in the MVP spot.
Oh yeah, that's right. You don't like Curry in the MVP today.
Not today, no.
Okay.
No, I am quite light on Steph in comparison to. Well, let me pull ownership. Let me double check it. But I am not fond of Curry today. Which, like, I'm sure he's gonna make 10 threes or something, and people will freak out as if like that's why I don't like him. But it's neither here nor there. Let's see. He is 37% in the MVP. Yeah, no, I don't like that.
No. Okay. Where would you, if you're talking FanDuel, people always ask, what are the best spots? Do you think, actually, let me pull this up. This will be a good place for us to start today, because I know people complain about not talking enough FanDuel. I hope you guys understand, though. First of all, if Josh is on the show, a lot of times he will talk FanDuel. Adam and I, generally not so much. But at the same, like, DraftKings is just so much more. There's so much more nuance to DraftKings for Showdown than there is for FanDuel. That's all.
Here's what I would say about that line. I would flip Brown and Curry.
You'd put Curry in the, okay. All right. Yeah, and Brown's getting 20% less MVP ownership. Again, ownership of the MVP for FanDuel is a whole lot different than when you're talking about DraftKings. A whole lot different. Like usually these guys. I don't
have Curry and Brown that separated.
I don't know. We have 37% Curry, 34% Tatum, 16% Brown, and then it falls off a cliff. 5, 3, 1, 1, like nothing else.
I basically just took a little bit of Curry and gave it to Tatum, but like I only have Curry 2 fantasy points ahead of Jalen Brown for today, just because of the minutes disparity. But he's like, not that it matters, but he's saving $2,000 too. But I have Jalen Brown in my sim equal to the ownership of the public at the MVP spot, whereas Curry is in 37%. Like you're just going to make a significantly more unique lineup by flip-flopping those two guys.
Do you think it makes sense to look at some non-Curry Brown Tatum? And normally I know what the answer would be, but 5%, 3% on Wiggins. I mean, Wiggins was the highest scorer last game. Am I saying that it's likely he does that back-to-back games? No, absolutely not. But some of these mid-range guys do have legitimate upside.
I mean, I have 90% of the MVP spot going to those 3 guys. So yeah, I mean, like if you play this series out, we kind of probably already got it, but you can't really look at it like that. There are paths. I think, like Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, Marcus Smart. I think you go any one of those directions, really. Like Marcus Smart's not afraid to shoot. It'd be surprising to me if he were the highest scorer, and that would be a really interesting slate, but like there are paths to that.
Let's get into some good stuff here. Talk a little bit about DraftKings on the other side, and thanks for that super chat. So the captain spot, it was one thing this morning when you and I were discussing, we tried to take a different approach and tackle it more from a, hey, if we get these minutes right, we're going to have a really good night, right? Like that's betting perspective too. Like I put the betting video out. Check it out if you haven't done so yet too. Still got some time over on the Odd Shopper channel. It's the best NBA bets for today. And it's all about minutes, man. Like Kevon Looney, Otto Porter, Gary Payton. Is Horford going to go back to seeing, mid 30s? Robert Williams is starting again. He's good. It seems as if he's good to go. I think he plays 30. I know you have him at 28. We can discuss that, but there's a lot of nuance to the rotations today. And I think it's far more important than like, hey, Curry or Tatum at captain.
It's so important. It's the thing that I've been digging into. I spent some time, looking at minutes throughout the industry, trying to look at the past rotations, trying to make some tweaks. And I did move guys a little bit based on everything that I looked through today, but I am still on the 28 minutes for Robert Williams. Horford is my guy. Of the 4 readily available sources that I looked at today for minutes on Al Horford, one of them is at 34. One of them is at 33. One of them is at 30. We are at 31. I don't like doing this on a show. I think 31 is wrong. Just do. I don't know how else to say it. He was on pace to play 36 minutes in game 5. I don't know why we would think he's going to play 31 today with their season on the line. So I am still at 34. I honestly would up it if I could, but I don't have to because I'm already getting significantly more Horford than anybody else because it doesn't take much.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
I feel bad saying it. I don't know what else. I just, that's just one of those things. Like I don't see 31.
He is getting a decent amount of ownership. He's basically in the same neighborhood as Dre, but his price does continue to come down.
Yeah.
By the way, I told you Draymond Green was getting nowhere close to that Derrick White price point, man. They've separated.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course they would. There's no way he would drop beneath him. You said it was a guarantee that he would be below Derrick White by game 6.
I hate you so much.
I have no problem going back to Draymond Green again. Like, it's really the same conversation. If he's out of foul trouble, and mind you, he's fouled out in back-to-back games. I think last game though, he fouled out so he still would have played an additional, still would have played an additional couple minutes there. 2 minutes. So he was on pace for 37 in that game. He's just a terrible 3-point shooter. It can't get much worse. Do you know what he's shooting from 3 in this series?
27%.
0 for 11.
Never mind. 0%. That would be Chris.
He's 0 for 11. But the minutes are there. And look at his rebounds and assists. 13, 17 the last couple games. He had four steals in game 5 or game 4. What's interesting though is you haven't seen the block shots with Draymond Green. I think a lot of that just comes down to the fact that you're not blocking Robert Williams because, as we talked about this morning, everything's just a tip or an alley-oop, right?
Yeah.
And the only shots you're going to be blocking for the most part are 3-point attempts from. They just take so many threes. So I'm not saying it's all they do, but your shot blocking opportunities are going to be few and far between against this Boston team.
Yeah, it's not the kind of game you would expect, at least, unless you're taking on Dre and he's set, and their rotations will change that up a little bit. I don't remember which podcast I was listening to earlier today, but the Looney Draymond combo in this series is like, plus 30 something in every minute they've played together. They are negative with Draymond at center, with no Looney on the floor right now. And I think that's very interesting. I'm really curious to see if they try to go to more Looney.
I think they will. You had him projected more minutes than I did. And I think you're probably right to project him there. Like, this is, again, just to follow up from this morning's conversation, Kevon Looney played over 13 minutes in the second half. And he was instrumental to, or I won't say instrumental because you don't necessarily know, but he was out there for that big run that they had to go up big in the fourth quarter and hold on to that lead. If he played 13 minutes, even 12 minutes in the first half, and say, even if you wanted to say, take away those additional 2 minutes that he got when Dre fouled out late in that game, right? And then Dre's in there with Peyton, fine. You're still talking around 24 minutes.
Yeah. I have him at 24. That is the high mark of everybody that I've looked at. And no one else is above my mark of 24. What I find interesting there is that I gave him 24 and I'm still not getting to him. So I don't know how the hell people are playing Kevon Looney today.
Who are you getting to around him?
Around that salary spot?
Yeah.
Al Horford, obviously.
I figured. So Horford's probably occupying a lot of that ownership in that salary range.
Sure is. Derrick White, somebody that I'm mildly high on for today.
See, I don't like Derrick White very much at all today. Like, I do not love Derrick White.
So do you like Grant Williams?
No. I don't particularly like any of those guys.
Interesting.
I'll explain.
Do you like Horford?
What? Yes.
Okay.
I was
going to say, you kind of have to like.
No. Let me explain. I think I said it to you earlier. I think the possibility that Horford and Williams continue to play more minutes alongside each other is not good for anyone off the bench, because this is game 6. Marcus Smart's going to play a lot of minutes, right? He played 40 minutes last game and game before that. Jalen Brown's going to play a lot of minutes. Another guy coming in at 40 plus. He might play the whole damn game tonight, save for a couple minutes. Jason Tatum is going to play 44, 45 minutes tonight. Okay.
Yeah.
If Robert Williams plays 30, and I think he does. Actually, I think Robert Williams could potentially play more than 30 tonight if all things go according to my plan. And I think Al Horford could play probably around 35 in an elimination game at home. It doesn't actually leave you that much off the bench.
I'm with you on that one. Unrelated note to everything, well, related to what you just said, but just an extra detail. Evidently, Robert Williams was getting his knee drained on the reg during that Miami series and eventually just stopped getting it drained. And it seems like not getting it drained has been better than like trying to get the funk taken out of it.
Yeah. And it's not like he's out there and he's laboring. Dude, remember that chase down block we saw in game 5? He ran the length of the court when I forget who it was, snatched that turnover. Robert Williams ran. You got to tell the viewers who, and I'll get to your guys' super chats in just a second. By the way, 33 likes away from 400. Appreciate you. We will get there with ease. Give him the plus minus stats compared to the rest of the Celtics team. This will blow your guys' mind if you didn't hear it yet, because it makes no sense. Well, it does make sense. He's been that good.
I'm going to make up whatever these numbers are, but they're going to be close. Robert Williams in this series is like plus 34 or
I think
something.
It was 31. Yeah.
Sure. Something north of 30.
Yeah.
The only other two major positives are Aaron Nesmith and Peyton Pritchard. The only guy that of everybody else, Jalen Brown is neutral at 0. Everybody else is like in the minus 20s to minus 30s.
Across 5 games.
Yeah.
And they've won 2 of them. And
it's crazy.
That's how good he's been. That's how damn good he's been. So, yeah, I think you're now just looking at a guy who, assuming that knee is good. Let's not forget. I think people kind of forget about Robert Williams, the fact that he actually averaged 30 minutes per game in the regular season too.
Yeah.
Robert Williams played 30 minutes per game in the regular season.
I wish I had a better feel for him right now, because I don't.
My feel is I'm just going to assume he's good enough to go, and he plays 30 to 32 minutes. I mean, he lost a minute and a half almost to a blowout last game too. So
28 and 29 are the only numbers that I see in the industry for him. I'm on the 28 side of that. I don't love it. I'm getting to a little bit of him. I'm lighter than the field. If I gave him that extra minute, it would probably bring me neutral to the field. But I'm so heavy on Boston. I'm so heavy on Boston right now, and I hate it. It's really not fun. I wish I were getting more Robert Williams, but like I'm running out of Boston. Like at some point in time, I need Golden State guys.
I hear you. His per 36s in the regular season, 12 points, 12 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.1 steal, and 2.7 blocks.
Dude, I'm so excited for him.
He's good
in the future, like the next 2 or 3 years.
Like, what happens if Robert Williams? Remember in game 4 where he tweaked his knee late but was on pace to play 35 minutes? What happens if he plays 35 minutes tonight? He's not expensive at all.
No.
He's cheaper than Draymond Green. What would you rather have? 35 minutes from Draymond Green or 35 minutes from Robert Williams?
I mean, unquestionably 35 minutes from Robert Williams.
Right.
It's not close.
Right. And it's also the likelihood that he gets the 35 minutes also isn't very close to Draymond Green.
Right. Like if Robert Williams plays 35 minutes, that means he's probably healthy. I
would think so.
I think him probably just going well.
I think him playing 30 minutes last game says he's probably pretty okay. I
kind of want to give him another minute, but I'm going to let it ride.
But don't you think it's kind of like, and again, you could be completely right. I could be right. Like I said, I might be over projecting him, but I am okay with it because I think there are signs that point towards him being able to being on pace to get there. But if Robert Williams plays 30 minutes tonight, I would like to have quite a bit of him at 32% ownership. Like, he's not that much more owned than Derrick White, and he's not that much more expensive than Derrick White either.
If I had him in for 30 minutes, he would basically look exactly like Draymond's aggregate projection.
Okay. And you're giving Draymond 35 minutes, I assume, or around?
I did 35.
Right. Okay. Yeah, he's a fun player. Right. They need him. They need Robert Williams tonight.
They do. Well, what I'm hoping they get is a turn back the clock Al Horford game.
I think it's definitely doable. We've seen him do it throughout the playoffs. I do wonder, is this guy just gassed from playing a million minutes? It's not, I mean, they had time off, you know, they got 2 days in between games. He should be okay.
I mean, over the past 375 minutes that Al Horford has played, that goes back to a little bit of Boston, Miami, May 17th, basically a month. He's at 0.88 fantasy points per minute. So like, even if you want to discount that a little bit more, it's not like he's been ultra bad. This is the playoffs after all, like rates are going to go down. It's not even so much that I care about his rates or like how I think he's going to play. If I'm right about his playing time, I don't really care about anything else today.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I feel the same thing about Robert Williams, honestly.
If I get Horford right and he plays 34, 35 minutes and puts up like 32 fantasy points and totally hits his projection, I'm going to be really, really happy that I have a ton of him. Because that's the right process, even though I got the wrong outcome.
All right, let's take a couple super chats. If you had 1K salary left, who are you taking? All right. So
No one.
All right. Well, we got to give him something.
I wouldn't care which $1,000 guy I got.
I was just going to say that's pretty much the answer. It doesn't really matter. The only way you get blowout minutes tonight is if the Warriors get completely shit on and they go, we'll take it back to San Francisco for game 7. We'll handle business there. But it's not like
Right.
they want to do that. So, and if that were the case, all right, Kuminga, I don't know. Iguodala is not even $1,000. He's above that.
Moses Moody, Nick Stauskas, Aaron Nesmith, like all of those guys are the exact. You're basically saying like, I wonder who's going to play 3 minutes at the end of this game and be the guy that scored. I don't know.
Here's what I would say though. I would take somebody from Golden State because the only way it happens is there's a blowout. And if it's and the only way it happens is if Golden State is getting blown out. What I mean by that is Boston loses this game, it's all over. Yes, we've seen it. We did see it happen in game 7 where it was a massive blowout and Monty Williams decided to just like, all right, guys, for Phoenix against Dallas. All right, just take a seat. We're not coming back from a 50-point deficit or for whatever it was. But generally speaking, you won't see that unless this is you're not going to see 50 points. So yeah, I would say Golden State because I would expect Kerr to pull them before Boston does because they actually have a way out of this one. Boston doesn't. But to Josh's point, there's nobody really that's expected to get any minutes.
No.
Not
at the $1,000 mark on the dot.
Right.
Like at that point in time, you are crossing your fingers that you picked the right $1,000 guy from a blowout. I can't do that.
Ryan Langley. Thanks as always for the great content, guys. Also, Laffy, thanks for the movie Tread recommendation. Yeah, the documentary. Watched it last night. Awesome. Yeah, I told you, it was so nuts, man. So nuts. You still have to watch it. I want to get your feedback on that.
I do.
Brandon Wagner is playing Gary Payton II at captain on DraftKings getting too cute.
Yes.
I think it probably is because you can play any of those mid-range guys there and still build a really nice lineup.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot for that to get you where you need to be. It's just more likely that he's in the utility spot than anything else. And like the mid-tier, like the Marcus Smart, Al Horford, Derrick White, Kevon Looney type guy takes that captain spot first.
Yeah. And if you guys are trying to follow along with ownership, it's all free. All of our ownership is free today for NBA. And if you don't even need to create an account, go over to stochastic.com. That's right. Stochastic with a K.com. Yeah, we're getting there, man. We're going to get there. This is my first show doing it with since the name change, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah, I believe so. Also, though, if you're looking to get 50% off everything on the site, not for a week, but for an entire month, it's a phenomenal deal. go to stokastic.com/join. It's STOKASTIC. And if you're like, oh, that's hard to spell, yeah, try and tell me it was easy for you to spell Awesemo out of the gate as well. And use the promo code NBA Live, all caps, all one word, 50% off everything. You're talking, and you might be like, yeah, but basketball's almost over. Doesn't matter. All of these tools can help you win for sports you don't know. I mean, MMA, NASCAR, golf, soccer, everything out. MLB is in full swing. Esports, yeah, tennis, soccer, all of that, everything. So yeah, get 50% off everything for the month. You can get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on if you want that too. But all the tools created by the man, Awesemo himself. He still has the name. And helped managed by some of the best guys out there. Also, join our premium Discord. It's sweet. Great community. And you got the premium office hours where you got the pros in there from Awesemo answering your questions. Oh, from Stokastic. Oh, I've been doing that read for like 4 years now, man. It's tough.
It's
answering
really
your questions.
Hard. It's hard.
It's hard. And helping you better your game. Stokastic.com/join. Check it out. Come join the family. We'd love to have you over there. 50% off everything. All right. Let me turn this over to you. Where do you want to go next? You said you had some stuff to follow up on. I'd love to hear where you're at.
Well, it was mostly just the Horford minutes thing that I was thinking of then. Yeah, I mean, I guess Derrick White is probably like the most interesting guy for me today. I'm not fond of the way that this is working out for me, but I have him in at 29 minutes. That's not even true. I have him in at 28 minutes. No, I do have him in at 29. I'll shut up now. It is 29. I have him in for 29 minutes. That is a low mark, or at least a mid-tier mark in the industry. Somebody has him at 32. Somebody has at 30. Another one is matching me at 29. I'm cool with that, but like, it's causing me to get a lot of him, and I didn't expect that. And it's not like I have him projected for like a crazy rate or anything along those lines, but he's become the guy at 29 minutes. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that his minutes are probably the one that's most in flux for Boston, even more so than Robert Williams. Derrick White's minutes over the past 5 games, 32, 30, 24, 36, 21. So he can either fully tank these lineups that I have today, play at 22 minutes, not be worth a shit. If he goes 30 plus today, though, which is certainly on the table, then I think he's very live at 6K and getting sort of underrepresented. 23% ownership in the utility spot seems kind of weird for a guy that's played 30 plus minutes in 3 out of the 5 games.
I can understand where you're coming from completely. I do. I get it. Let's reverse engineer this one a little bit.
Sure.
Before we do though, shout out to Vince, 1979 Gator. He had a super chat. I missed it. He said, "What's up, fellas? Can't wait for another playback watch party night. Hell yeah." Peyton Pritchard. Okay. First off, are you guys hanging out? Josh, you think they're gonna come hang out tonight?
They certainly better, man. We're gonna be hanging out all the way up until like midnight again tonight. It's a great time.
Yeah, you can come and go as you please too. It's a hangout.
Everything, it works perfectly. We're all at the exact same spot, just watching the game, except for 1 or 2 of you goons that are like watching it somewhere else and telling us what happens. But
it's always that Jordan L. Jordan L. And it's not Jordan Lockhart. It's Jordan L. It's another Jordan L. who just likes to come in early and tell us what's going on. But aside from that, it's fantastic. And it's synced up.
I think we've learned that people with the name Jordan just suck.
And the chat is synced up. Like on YouTube, you guys are hearing us 9 seconds after it happens. So whenever news would break in the regular season, it'd be wild because chat would flow in and be like, dude, guys, this guy's out. Like I already said that, wait for it to get there, but they don't know. People don't know that. It's all synced up. When we say something, boom, you're right there. It's beautiful. Come hang out. Jordan put it up on the screen, getplayback.com/room/Awesemo. Super simple. We can't put it in chat because I guess it's like competing streaming stuff with YouTube, even though it really isn't because YouTube doesn't offer that service. Right. Playback is the future, baby. It's the future of watching basketball, really any live sports. And we had a couple hundred in there with us last time. We'd love to have you come join and add to that. And let's build something here. Let's build a family over at Playback, man. And thanks for that super chat, Vince. He had a question too, Josh. Peyton Pritchard. Over under 10 minutes today.
Under.
That was the question.
Under.
What do you have, Matt? 6? 8. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't play at all.
It would not be the most shocking thing in the world.
But I would definitely go under 10 with you. Yes.
He's just the type of guy where like Golden State goes on like an 8-0 run or something. He's the type of guy you put in for like a spark and an energy. And like, I think he's going to get one rotation no matter what.
Yeah. Like that late first quarter, early second quarter rotation for a few minutes while, yeah.
Same starting lineup for the Warriors.
Arcatel's a playback is cool, but I still miss the YouTube watch parties. Why though, dude? We weren't even synced up. Like it was fun. Yeah. We had fun, but it sucked. Josh and I weren't even synced up. This is way better.
If YouTube offered something during those streams, that would make sense, but it's not like there's no difference. It's just worse.
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing the exact same thing.
Like if you want to say, if you did it on Twitch and you had like polls and activities and like all sorts of different bells and whistles, I could get that, but like the YouTube experience is just the same thing, but not as good.
For sure. Thanks for all the super chats, guys. All right. Next up, let's talk mid-range here. This is where it always gets interesting for me. Value is like the least interesting to me today because it's basically just flip a coin in a lot of fronts. Like the 1K guys, I don't know. Andre Iguodala, all right, you know, maybe he plays 5, maybe he gets 5 minutes today. I don't know. And what happened if Looney didn't get any foul trouble? Does Iguodala play at all last game? So Bielitsa, you get 4, 5, 6 minutes from him. It's entirely possible that one of those guys ends up in the optimal lineup and they give you like 6 fantasy points in 5 minutes because we've seen it happen before. But yeah, I guess before we get to the mid-range, what do you make of the Pritchards, the Bielitsa, the Iguodalas, those guys who are not exactly Grant Williams, Gary Payton, Otto Porter territory, but aren't 1K flat either?
I mean, speaking of the Grant Williams, the Manu Bielitsa, Otto Porter territory, I have the exact same amount of all three.
No, Grant Williams, Payton, Porter, not Bielitsa. I was saying because Grant Williams is only $400 less than Payton.
That's true. That's which is crazy. I'm light in comparison to the field on Gary Payton. I'm basically neutral on Grant Williams and Otto Porter. Just the way that Grant Williams has been used in this series, if he ends up playing like 28 minutes today, I don't think that we could have seen that coming, barring any sort of barring a Robert Williams injury or something along those lines. I don't have a great feel for any of that like low mid tier. I'm basically all of my exposure is existing above Jordan Poole. And then it's just like every single one of those lineups is just getting scattershot with a Grant Williams or a Bielitsa or a Porter or a Payton or a Payton Pritchard. I'm just not getting to that sort of section.
Ilan, I don't even know how to say that. Said Josh, Kentucky is such a great place to live or visit, no doubt about it. Yeah, Josh was on the show the other day talking about how he wants to move to Kentucky, and I tried to. You can't back Josh down when he's foaming at the mouth. When he has conviction, it's difficult. But someone in chat backed you up on that.
I wouldn't even know where to move in Kentucky. I don't think I can name one place in Kentucky that I think
Lexington. Is that Kentucky?
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. It's got to be awful,
Kentucky,
though.
right?
Sounds terrible.
What's the one? What's the city with it's always on first 48?
I never watched it.
Where everyone's getting killed.
Paducah,
Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah. Like, what am I going to do? Go watch them make baseball bats? Jesus, that's boring.
Michael McKinney, favorite star and favorite pro spot for FanDuel Cash. There you go, Josh. I'll give you that one for FanDuel. Michael McKinney, thank you, sir. Asked favorite star and favorite pro spot for FanDuel Cash. And if you guys have any other questions, you can hit us up.
Jalen Brown and Clay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jalen Brown for sure at star. And then pro, it was star and pro, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jalen Brown for sure at star. I like Clay the most at pro. You could go Draymond there, and I think that's totally fine. You could go, if this is cash, yeah, probably Clay or Draymond, but I would lean Clay. I guess, well, Wiggins is in that discussion too, but he would be third. Clay, Draymond, Wiggins are the three answers, and that's the order that I would choose them.
Okay. Arcatel says, WTF, never watched the first 48. If I'm not watching sports, I'm watching the ID channel. First 48's A&E, bro. But maybe they have replays. Maybe you're catching the old ones. They did 2 of them in Philly. And I don't know if it was like the mayor or whoever, Josh, that was like, yeah, we don't want you doing these here anymore.
I bet. They want to highlight that stuff.
It's like, yeah, we're good on this. Thank you. Thanks for coming and checking out our city, but no, thank you. The best are, God. Where are, oh God, it's going to, I'll have to think. There's one spot where like every first 48 episode is now, and they're all just, they're crazy, man. This is a good show. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tulsa gets crazy.
Another place that no one should ever be. Like Ashley says, you live in North Carolina and you bash Kentucky. I live in a beach vacation town. It's not exactly like the sticks of North Carolina. If you just got like teleported in, you wouldn't think you were in North Carolina. You got to drive like an hour north.
Yeah, you got a nice place.
Yeah, it's not. Any state that's landlocked shouldn't exist. We should just cut the hole out of the United States and just create like one giant ring so that everything can touch good shit.
No.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. What are we missing? What are we really losing if we do that?
No, you're crazy. You can't. Not all of them.
All of them. All of them. Just let it sink straight into the core of the earth.
Like I live in PA. PA's landlocked, right?
Yeah, then it's an awful state.
What? You say it's it's not though, because you have a good climate for the most part. It gets a little cold, but not a bad climate.
That's basically the reason I moved.
I don't love the climate, but I was.
So your first bullet point for this discussion, you've already been like, you know what? It's not great.
I love, spring, summer, and fall. Great. The winter, like three of the 4 seasons are great. You know what I like about PA? I'm gonna tell you right now, the people are just real around here. You say what you want. It's true, man.
They're real
true.
Something.
Just call them what you want, pal. Call them what you want. People
I
around
call
here
them a lot of things in
the Northeast.
2 days.
The Northeast will at least let you know how it is. That's all I'm saying.
I'm down here in King's Landing. You could live in Winterfell as long as you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah, you're down there in King's Landing having to deal with old Joffrey.
That's fine.
Nah, man.
He's a great king, in my opinion.
What is, and then we'll get back to basketball. We still got some stuff to talk about. If you could wipe one state, you could only wipe one state off the map, off the face of the earth, what would it be?
It's hard. It's a toss-up. Can I say that there's a tie?
You already have 2 answers?
Yeah, New York can go immediately.
Yeah?
Whatever I could do to remove New York City from this planet would be great.
Okay.
I would happily take out, if we could separate California and stop being one big state, like I would happily lop out chunks of California.
I didn't think that was, so basically Josh just said 2 non-landlocked states.
See, just portions of California.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's how I said it. I mean, all of New York. I am not mad about that at all.
Josh will take off the entire West Coast or most of it, right?
No, there's a lot of, just like cut out the chunk of San Francisco and the chunk of Los Angeles and like the rest of it, and just smush California down a little bit. It's a better state then.
It's funny because like 2 of the most populated states, which means that a large % of our viewers are watching it.
That's fine.
Well,
New York,
first of all,
whatever we can do to get rid of New York City is going to be a net positive to the United States of America.
If anyone wanted to actually take offense to that, it's ridiculous. But oh yeah, I would. Truthfully though, I respect. If you live in New York City, I respect it. I would never want to live in New York City.
I don't understand the appeal. And I say that as someone that lived in the Northeast for 25 years. It's not like lost on me. I spent plenty of time in New York. I spent plenty of time in Philadelphia, decent analog in certain spots. Don't really love Philadelphia either, but neither here.
I think you'd like where I live. You're going to come see it on Sunday.
That's not even remotely close to the same thing.
No. But I'm saying, I think you would like this place because it's just good people, lots of hanging out, nice little suburban town. You know what I mean? It's not
whatever
Philly.
I can do to be away from people is the best. So that's what
I'm with you. I told you, I'm trying to go to Idaho.
But get rid of New York. Get rid of New York. If someone can tell me one positive thing about the city of New York, or like we'll say New York City in this case,
I'd sleeps.
Like to go to Buffalo and eat wings. So I'd be sad about that. But like, what's the positive part of New York City?
Fashion.
Yeah. Spending 3 times more on a shoebox to live in. Yeah, that sounds like a really appealing thing to do. I'll stick to my 3,500 square.
All right,
foot
I got
house.
something. Hold on, I have something good about New York. The subway.
I don't think that's a true statement either.
Jordan, you can do this. Jordan, what's good about?
If New York was good, we'd be like, say, Tokyo and have an exceptional public transportation system, but we don't.
Or Singapore.
Right.
We just have
our big cities are not as good as international big cities. That I think is very clear.
The funny thing though is everyone wants to come to ours.
I know, and I don't know why.
It's so
when
crazy.
I went to that FanDuel final for Alex a couple years ago, and we were in Times Square, I wish I could have just teleported out immediately. It was awful, awful. That is the worst place on the planet.
Times Square is not bad.
If you want to go to the M&M store, don't ever talk to me. Just don't talk to me.
You should have gone to the
There's a Margaritaville in Times Square. What kind of psychopath is going there? Oh, I'm going to waste away in Margaritaville tonight.
All right. So it's not for you. It's not for you. That's okay. It's not for you.
It's an awesome state. I'm just kidding. It's terrible.
How awesome is Draymond Green today at his newly minted $7,000 price point?
I don't know. Where's he from? Yeah, he's from Michigan, right?
I have no idea. Chat's just going wild.
I'd like to see how many people are actually on my side here.
It's really just a preference thing. Is all it is.
Yeah.
I like living in the burbs personally. That's all.
Living in New York is great if you don't want to have money.
Or if you have a ton of money, because then you just have everything taken care of. You walk outside and there's a car waiting for you. That's different.
Yeah, and like 5 vagrants.
But if you're scrapping to get, like, if you're just scraping to get by in New York, that can't be fun.
I can't imagine being me or being us. Like, Katie and I need like 4 roommates. I don't need that in my life.
No. All right, get back to basketball with me for a little bit here, because we're going over to playback in about 12 minutes to watch this game, and it's going to be fun. But Draymond Green, I'm just, when it comes to all of these other mid-range guys, and we didn't talk about Wiggins yet. I want to get into Wiggins a little bit more as well before we put a bow on this. Wiggins is popular. He was the optimal captain last game. Draymond Green has had 2 passable games in a row. Still can't shoot for shit, but at least last game had a couple that he threw down. He had 8 points at the first quarter, and then he just completely and then he just
gave up on scoring after that.
Fell off again. But yeah, talk to me about those 2 guys, because I think those are really interesting spots. And same with Klay Thompson. Both of these guys for the or all 3 of them for the Warriors.
Draymond Green is my most exposed Warrior. I am quite a bit over the field. I'm happy to go back to him, even at that $7K price tag. I just think he has, like, we poo-poo the things that Draymond's done so far, and I am a little nervous about him rolling into Boston, but it's not like I change anything when I do that. It's just so easy for him to rack up stats. And if you happen to get one of those days where, like, the first corner 3 that he shoots goes in, which, he has a step in shit moment, which is very easy to do if you're in one of these big cities.
I was going to say that if you were setting that up, right? That was a setup, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's so he hits one of those and he only needs 2 more putbacks to hit his points prop. So I love the upside of Draymond if things just go slightly right from a scoring perspective, because the rebounds and the assists are going to be there. He's just going to be involved, or he's just played completely off the floor like he was in game 4 or whatever it was. So I love the idea of getting to Draymond. I'm very happy that he is my most exposed Golden State Warrior. And I think he works sort of no matter how the game is going, barring getting tossed.
I just keep going back to Draymond Green, and I think it's viable. Man, 35 minutes from him is fine. Per minute production from him, fine. If you combine the regular season and the postseason, he's still on DraftKings a +1 fantasy point per minute player. So it's perfectly reasonable to me to get there. Also, not only reasonable, but I would say imperative to check out Prize Picks, because not many places are giving you $100 first match deposit bonus over there. All you have to do is use, I'm assuming, Jordan, so I did the other one today and it was wrong. This is still Awesemo as the promo then, right? Okay, so I haven't changed it yet. AWESEMO, $100 first match deposit bonus when you sign up over at Prize Picks, and use the link in the description or the one that Jordan's about to throw in the chat. People are posting screenshots a lot there. It just keeps getting more and more popular because, look, you make a 5-player lineup, you can 10x your entry fee. And I think it's mostly appealing to a lot of people that are in non-legal betting states, but it's in something. I think it's in 9 betting states as well, but all of the states that betting is not legal, Prize Picks is, and it's player props. It's sweet. You're just basically building parlays, and you could do it a million different ways. You could do 4 and do a power play where if you hit all 4, you 10x. But if you hit, say, you do 5 and you hit 4 or 5, you still 2x. If you hit 3 or 5, you still make some money back. Not like a traditional parlay. You got the free Prize Picks tool over at Awesemo or stochastic.com, free every single day of the week. Go to prizepicks.com, go to the App Store, go to the Google Play Store, but more importantly, use that promo code Awesemo. It's still Awesemo. We'll get a change. AWESEMO, first match deposit bonus of up to $100. Real solid to get you kicking it off the right way over there at prizepicks.com. All right, Josh. So if we're building out a lineup right now and we're going, say, one of the larger field, but single entry, and there are some of those, there's like a $12, $20,000, I'd call it relatively large field, or whatever. You see some $4 single entries with 30,000. Is there any way you could be different without being crazy if you're building one lineup? Like, how would you start that?
Yeah, I don't think it's all that crazy at all. Like, if you just assume 10,000 people are in a contest, like I've got plenty of lineups that I'm playing today that I don't think are outlandish. Like I've got a Jalen Brown captain, Otto Porter, Derrick White, Horford, Robert Williams, Jason Tatum lineup that uses all but $100 of the salary cap. I would expect that to be duped 1.3 times in a 10,000 person contest based on the current ownership projections that we have. Like, very easy lineup to get to. It is a lineup that I'm playing right now, so feel free to jam that in wherever you want, but plenty of options at very low duplication. I don't think it's that hard to get away to make a unique lineup today. Marcus Smart, Otto Porter, Jordan Poole, Horford, Brown, Tatum, like those are easy. If you pay down for Bielitsa, you can make really good lineups as a utility spot. Any combination of like Horford, Thompson, Smart, Tatum, Curry. They're there. I think it's really easy to make lineups without dupes today, or with especially in like a single entry version.
That's what I mean, though. Doing it, but without being dumb, right? And I think there are plenty of ways. Like you were just referencing some of them. I think there are plenty of ways to do that without just making bad lineups. Because a lot of times people try so hard to be different that the lineups just objectively not going to win, like objectively bad out of the gate, right? There's a difference between being contrarian and being dumb. But it does seem like there are ways to, you don't even have to call it like super contrarian, but just, all right, well, if these guys are all getting absurd captain ownership, or maybe this guy just isn't getting much at all, or even in the utility spot, like there are certain players that I'm looking at right now and I go, okay. Like for me, one spot, and I know you and I are on different pages here, but I'm also projecting him a little bit better than you are. Kevon Looney, if he really is 19% owned, 19% owned overall, that seems a little low to me for a 1-game slate and a guy that's dropped 40 plus in 3 of his last 10. So
I just got to a really decently ranked Kevon Looney captain lineup. I know you're not a huge fan of Derrick White, but Derrick White is in it. Looney captain, Derrick White, Horford, Draymond, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. You know, you want to turn one of those, you want to turn Tatum into Steph there, get a little bit more balance. I get it, but like that right there, not a lot of people are getting to because of the Looney captain piece.
I like that. Yeah, and if Looney goes off and has one of those, 11 point, 14 rebound games with a couple steals or blocks or something and a few assists, you could get there. Do you have any Robert Williams captain lineups?
No. Ooh, not true. One. Didn't think I did. I do have one. Yeah. What's
your captain ownership actually look like? Here, that's a good way to close this out for anyone that's last minute tinkering on their lineups. Oh, and
it's essentially all Horford, Brown, and Derrick White.
Oh, okay. And seems unlikely. We're 65 likes away from 500, but I feel I would be remiss to not ask if we could potentially get there because that would be awesome. And if you're hanging out with us after this on playback, we'd love to have any and all of you guys, even you, Frank, you want to come hang out and you want to watch over on playback, perfectly synced up, and you're into that betting too. Cause we're sweating bets over there. We've been crushing it lately. Try, knock on wood, try and keep this one going. We've been crushing it lately. And you want $200 for free. And maybe you haven't signed up at a sports book yet. Go to BetMGM, use the link in the chat or the one in the description, deposit $10. When you sign up, put that $10 on either team to win tonight. For me, it makes sense to put it on Golden State because you're getting $200 free anyway when this bet settles. So if Golden State hits at plus 150, you're also netting a nice little bit of money on that. All you have to do is bet $10 on either team to win. That's it. And barring a tornado ripping through the stadium, each team, either one of them scores 22 plus points, you get 10 into $200 like that when the bet settles. It's literally free money. It's a lock. So, no better way to start your bankroll off, Josh, and be like, oh yeah, I'll take the free $200 and build my worst case scenario. You lose it all. You only lost $10. I like it.
Yeah, you can't beat it. You really can't.
No.
By the way, to all the people of the great state of New York, hit that thumbs up.
Yeah, New York. Where are you, New Yorkers, and part of Californians that Josh wants to eradicate from Earth? That was the phrase he used. He said, I want to eradicate people that live in those states from the Earth. I thought it was extreme, but you went there.
It's true.
It was really, really an extreme thing to say, especially for all of them.
I don't have anything else to add. I agree with everything that came out of my mouth.
I kid, of course. We love you all, and hope to see you over there when we start this playback stuff. What was I asking you before I got to? I was saying for people that are doing some last minute tinkering. What was I asking you about?
I don't know.
No, you got nothing.
Yeah, it was probably not that interesting to begin with.
Probably right, but I don't know. I thought it was pretty good. I usually ask some poignant questions. Not tonight. I guess not. Anyway. Do you have a lot of Horford at captain?
I do. Freddie wants to know how I developed this elitist attitude. by being elite. How the hell else do you get it?
By living in middle Pennsylvania in a mining town. That's how.
Yeah.
And then getting out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I realized it really quick. I was like, oh, I am better.
For those of you that
Jordan's just dying.
But there's certain people that still don't realize that you love the heel persona. Certain people get it. Certain people, I think, actually, as a matter of fact, I believe many of them embrace it. But other people go, this fucking guy.
No. What are you gonna do?
This guy. I don't know. I think you're all right. You'll do.
That's really funny. Eric, I'm not.
You're not what?
He said, now I understand why he's a Tim Dillon fan.
No,
Actually, not.
I'm a huge Tim Dillon fan. Not Josh. But yeah, Tim Dillon's funny as shit.
Yeah, Mr. Nice Guy. Also not true. I did not develop my elitist attitude by never getting punched in the face.
You ever been punched in the face?
I have been punched in the face.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I had my jaw wired shut for 2.5 months. That sucked.
Did not have that happen to me.
Dude was a monster in sucker. I mean, he was huge. Like, I was 17 years old. I mean, there's no way I take this guy anyway. I was just highly self-medicated, shall we say. And yeah, bad decisions happen, but
They do.
bad decisions happen. That's I lost, dude. I'm 6'1". I was down to 142 pounds when those wires came off. Crazy.
Jesus. You're like
Crazy.
Kanye. You should have
$142.
spit some rhymes.
$142.
Josh did not used to get beat up at school.
No, there's like 6 kids at his school.
No, there's a lot. But like, I'm not little.
Pretty big. You're what, 6'3", 215 maybe?
207 right now. Lost.
Oh, you're
like
down.
8. COVID, baby.
What was your highest weight?
Like ever?
Yeah.
Probably like 225.
Okay.
It's never gotten all that crazy.
You got up there a little bit. Nothing crazy though. My highest was like 202, I think. Down to 180 now though. 180. Keeping it svelte.
Let's go watch a basketball game.
Let's do it, man. We're actually.
I wish
supposed
I
to
were
hang out.
6'3", 180. That would be my goal.
Ship happens. I see why you don't like the city. Y'all can't fight.
That shouldn't be an appealing part of this, obviously.
Yeah, why would I? Yeah. Right. Oh yeah. Well, let me go to a place where I need to fight every day. That's just absurd.
No,
dude.
that's
If
not
I
a way
need
to
to,
live
sure.
life.
And if I drink, sometimes I'm more willing to engage. But nah. But why? If you imagine New York City, if you can fight, you'll love it here. I mean, what?
It's like, no, that's the. I'm pretty sure that I don't want to live like it's 1470. I don't have to fist fight someone for a street chicken.
Yo, I'm not from Philly, Patrick. I live outside of Philly. I don't know. My great uncle was a professional boxer, though. Fought Max Baer and was mentioned several times he was a professional. Actually, he was a heavyweight champion. As a matter of fact, you know the movie Cinderella Man?
Yeah, the
Russell
one
Crowe?
where I thought that was the one with what is her name? I don't know, the broad boxer. I can't remember it now. My joke.
Talking about the Clint Eastwood movie?
Yeah, I don't have the
$1 Million Baby? No.
Yeah, I lost the joke.
Cinderella Man. Cinderella Man. Look up Tommy Loughran. It was pretty cool. Actually, you see that picture right there? That was him right there. He was a heavyweight champion. No joke. They took
That's
out Max
the great
Baer.
Hambino, man. What are you talking about?
Oh, that's a great picture, though, right? Come on, that's a good thing.
It is. You beat my boxing story now, unfortunately. I was just going to say that my dad sparred with Ali, but that doesn't really get me anywhere.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he got the fucking shit beat out of him, obviously.
Hey, before we go, I wanted to look something up real.
Ooh, the Phantom of Philly.
Oh, yeah, dude. He was a Philly guy.
He had, holy shit.
What?
35. He had so many fights.
He was legit, man. He was a heavyweight champion.
Yeah,
he was
but
legit.
Like, he was 124, 33, and 12.
Is that how many fights he had?
Yeah.
Wow. That's insane.
Dude, he must have just been fighting like every other day.
They probably did back then.
Oh, he was just taking fight after fight after fight.
I actually
fighting the
didn't
same
know
dude like 2 weeks later.
I didn't know that. James Braddock was Russell Crowe's character, and they were talking about like at the beginning of Cinderella Man, you listen to the radio and they're like, yeah, Tommy Loughran just knocked out so and so. It's pretty cool.
His fourth fight that I see on record here February 17th, 1920. Unfortunately, a loss for him, but he fought Happy Jack McWilliams. We got to go to playback, man. Let's get out of here.
All right, we will head over there. By the way,
this conversation.
If you guys aren't coming over, I wish you would. But Prize Picks, like I said, $100 sign up bonus with the promo code Awesemo. I'm on the over Steph Curry points, 28.5. I think Steph Curry has a monster performance tonight. I like pretty much any overs on Robert Williams at this point. Just throwing it out there, 16.5. I'm on the over. I also like Kevon Looney over 6.5 rebounds because I think the minutes get there. And I'm going under 1.5 threes on our boy Derrick White today because I think he could lose some minutes. Over at Prize Picks, use that promo code, get $100 when you sign up. You ready to head over there?
Yeah, let's do it. This is fascinating. We're gonna keep this conversation going too.
Who, Tommy? Who? The
I got a bunch of stuff that I want to mention that I'm
By the
seeing,
way,
so.
Phantom of Philly, pretty sick nickname.
It's not bad. It's not
All
bad.
right. We'll see you guys. Love y'all.
You guys
we'll
on Playback.
Playback.com/room/awesome. Throw it on the screen.